I want you to picture a specific moment. We have all been there. It is a Tuesday afternoon.
Oh.
Right. It is a Tuesday afternoon meeting. The project is stalled. The energy in the room is not just low, it is subterranean.
The classic dead room.
Exactly. Everyone is just staring at their laptops. They are silently praying for the calendar invite to expire. It is painful.
The air feels heavy. It is almost like everyone is afraid to make a move.
Yeah. And then the door opens. Or maybe someone who has been quiet at the end of the table suddenly sits up.
Mm-hmm.
And they do not just speak. They shift the air pressure. It is like someone cracked a glow stick in a dark cave.
That is a great visual.
Suddenly people are leaning in. The silence is not awkward anymore. It is expectant.
You are describing a very specific type of human magic there. It is not just about being loud. It is about changing the temperature of the environment.
Which is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into a personality profile known as the FAFN, the Energy Brightener. This comes from the Max Energy ME80 personality system. And I will be honest, when I first read the profile, I thought, okay, so we are talking about the loud extrovert.
Sure. The life of the party.
Right. But looking at the research you brought today, it is way more complicated than that.
It is significantly more complex. If you think this is just about being the loudest voice in the room, you are missing the mechanics of how this person actually functions.
Mechanics.
Yeah, we are not just talking about volume. We are talking about ignition.
Ignition. I like that. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of how they light up a room, give us the 10-second crash course on the system itself. What are we looking at with the ME80?
Well, unlike standard personality tests that might just label you an introvert or a thinker, the ME80 system looks at human behavior through the lens of energy flow.
Energy flow.
Right. It asks, how do you generate energy? How do you structure it? And ultimately, how do you project it into the world?
So it is almost like analyzing the electrical circuitry of a person rather than just their surface behaviors.
Circuitry is the perfect word for it.
It feels less like putting someone in a box and more like reading their operating manual.
Exactly.
So our mission today is to dissect the FAFN Energy Brightener. We want to understand how they turn a stagnant room into a living field of action.
Yes.
And this is the part I'm really curious about. We want to look at what happens when that battery runs dry.
The hidden vulnerabilities. Let us start with their core identity.
The hero section.
Right. In the ME80 system, every profile has a hero section, which is a core definition. For the Energy Brightener, the definition is poetic, but highly functional.
What does it say?
It says turning quiet rooms into living fields, moving people from hesitation into action.
Turning quiet rooms into living fields. That implies that before they showed up, the room was
Dormant or dead.
Right.
The key characteristic here is that the FAFN is extraordinarily attuned to atmosphere and emotional flow. They do not just walk into a space. They read the spatial rhythm immediately.
Attuned how? Like they can just sense the vibe.
It is faster than that. Think about when you walk into a room where two people have just been arguing.
Oh, yeah.
Even if they are completely silent, you feel the tension, right?
It immediately. It makes you want to turn around and leave.
Well, the FAFN feels that tension, but their instinct is not to leave. It is to fix it.
To fix the tension.
They excel at translating emotion into vivid stories and images. They take the heaviness of the room and transmute it.
That is an interesting distinction, translating, because usually in business we talk about translating data into insights, but this is translating emotion.
Think about a dry, complex strategy document. It is boring. It is abstract.
Nobody wants to read it.
Exactly. The Energy Brightener takes that dry concept and wraps it in a narrative that makes it followable. That is a key word in the source material. Followable.
Followable. That implies movement. It is one thing to understand a plan. It is another thing to feel the actual urge to execute the plan.
Correct. The FAFN creates the urge. When they are operating correctly, they make abstract concepts engaging and comprehensible.
So the moment they speak, the spatial rhythm brightens.
And suddenly the group is ready to move. They are a catalyst.
Okay, but I want to push on this a bit. Is this calculated? Does the FAFN walk in and think, I need to manipulate the emotional state of these 5 people to achieve Q3 goals?
Not exactly.
Or is it instinctive? This brings us to their control mechanism, right?
The source material calls this mechanism ignition activation. And the philosophy running in their background software is ignite first, then advance.
Ignite first. So they literally cannot move until the fire is lit.
Precisely. To answer your question, it is largely instinctive. They operate by rapidly sensing the atmosphere.
They are scanning.
Yes. And if they detect energy gaps, silence, hesitation, awkwardness. They actively fill them.
So they are the ones who physically cannot stand the awkward silence.
They cannot. It feels uncomfortable to them. But they do not just fill it with noise, they fill it with resonance.
They refocus scattered attention.
Yes. For the FAFN setting, the rhythm is the value itself.
That is a huge reframing. I think a lot of managers might look at an FAFN employee and think, stop chatting and get to the spreadsheet.
But you are saying the chatting or the rhythm setting is the actual work.
Right, because without that ignition, the spreadsheet never turns into action.
They are filling the energy gaps so the real work can pass through.
All right, let us look under the hood. The ME80 system uses this energy matrix to explain the wiring.
The IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation layers.
Yeah, this gets a little technical, but I think it explains why they act this way. Let us break down these layers.
So we have 4 layers that explain the flow from inside to outside. Let us start at the very bottom. Layer 1, the IP, or inner value layer.
This is the starting line.
Right. For the FAFN, the IP is defined as energy drives initiation.
Which means?
It means their starting point is not a cold logic calculation.
Yeah.
And it is not a deep brooding sentiment. It is a pulse of pure energy.
It is a go button.
Exactly. They have a biological impulse to start things. The engine is always revving, waiting for the green light.
Okay, so they have this engine revving. Then we move up to layer 2, the IQ or emotional activation layer.
Yes.
Now, usually when I hear IQ, I think logic, math analysis. But the report defines this as structure and principle judgment.
This is the fascinating twist. You would expect an energy brightener to be chaotic, right?
Yeah, just purely emotional, throwing paint at the wall.
But they are not. This IQ layer provides a filter. Even though they are energetic, there's a structure and principle filter that activates the emotion.
So they are scanning the room for the right way to direct that energy?
It is not random at all.
It is like, I have this energy and I see the structure of the social situation, so I know exactly where to push to get a reaction.
Strategic resonance, which leads to layer 3, the EQ or decision calculation layer.
This feels like the big aha moment for understanding this type.
It is. It is defined as emotional expression and release.
Release sounds like a relief valve.
It is. For the FAFN, the decision-making process is not complete until it is expressed. They calculate by expressing. They channel that structured energy through emotional release outward.
Does that mean they do not actually know what they decided until they say it out loud?
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
We have all met people who need to talk it out to think.
Oh, absolutely.
That is the FAFN. They are not just broadcasting, they are processing. The conversation is the oven where the idea gets baked.
That explains so much. I have worked with people where I'm thinking, why are you telling me this half-baked idea?
But for them, telling you is the baking process.
That is the perfect analogy. And finally, we have layer 4, the manifestation layer.
This is defined as energy released outward. Impact action manifestation.
The visible result.
Because all the internal arrows are pointing out from the inner spark, through the structure, through the expression. The result is high visibility, real change.
You can physically see the FAFN working.
Yes.
So we have a machine built for output, a catalyst. Let us go deeper into that catalyst trait. The report mentions they are natural activators.
Think about a chemical reaction that is just sitting there inert. It needs a catalyst to kickstart the process.
That is the FAFN.
When a group is stalled, the Brightener makes people willing to participate.
And the tool they use is storytelling.
It's their primary weapon. They use vivid expression to make things followable.
As we mentioned, they do not just give data.
They provide the energy required to process the data.
I really love that distinction. Providing the energy to process the data, it is like, here are the numbers, and here is the caffeine you need to actually care about the numbers.
That is a very accurate analogy.
But, and here's where I want to get real, this sounds exhausting.
It is.
You cannot just be a nuclear reactor of social energy 24/7 without a meltdown.
You absolutely cannot. And this brings us to the shadow side.
The blind spots.
Every profile in the ME80 system has a blind spot. For the energy brightener, it is called high-frequency depletion.
High-frequency depletion, it sounds like a battery issue.
It essentially is.
Yeah.
The core warning in the text is continuing to shine will eventually burn you out.
But do they realize it? Or do they just keep spinning until they crash?
That is the danger. Because their ignition activation is so automatic, they enter a room, they sense a gap, they fill it. They often do not realize they are running on fumes.
So it sneaks up on them.
They are prone to a hidden fatigue. Long-term high output leads to exhaustion that is not immediately obvious because they just keep performing.
It is like the adrenaline wears off after the meeting and they just collapse.
Yes. It is the post-party crash, but in a professional setting. And this leads to another vulnerability: detail oversight.
I can guess where this is going.
Because they're so invested in field management, keeping the room alive, keeping the energy up, they easily overlook the settling and closing details.
They ignite the rocket but forget to check if the landing gear is locked.
Or they launch the product but forget to file the compliance paperwork.
Right.
It is not that they cannot do it. It is that the energy required for slow, quiet details feels heavy compared to the high-frequency energy of the launch.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
The text also mentions distraction.
This is a big one. At emotional peaks, when the room is buzzing, the FAFN is vulnerable to the feedback loop.
The feedback loop.
If the crowd laughs at a joke, the FAFN might chase the laughter down a rabbit hole and lose sight of the strategic goal.
They get addicted to the applause.
They get addicted to the resonance. They are pulled away from original targets by immediate feedback from the crowd.
And finally, the shadow trait involves the crash itself.
Yes, once their energy drops, their momentum declines noticeably. It is not a slow fade. It is a steep drop-off.
So knowing all this, the brightness and the burnout, how does this play out socially? The report calls their social persona strong presence.
To the outside world, these people are magnetic and warm. They make complex topics feel accessible.
They are the ultimate icebreakers.
The report mentions they are fantastic at closing the distance between people and getting peripheral people to participate.
The wallflowers.
Right. If you are standing awkwardly in the corner at a networking event, the FAFN is the one who spots you, walks over, and drags you into the circle.
But there is a misunderstanding here, is there not? I feel like people assume these bright people have infinite energy.
That is the fundamental misunderstanding of the FAFN. The world sees the radiance, they see the light.
And they assume the FAFN is like a solar panel absorbing energy from the crowd.
But actually, they are a bonfire.
Hmm.
They are burning their own wood.
They're fuel burning, not fuel gathering.
Correct. This role requires continuously burning self-energy as fuel. They light up the room, but they need fuel to do it.
That is a vital warning for anyone married to an FAFN or managing one. Do not take the brightness for granted.
Never. You have to protect their energy.
So let us pivot to the workplace application. If I am a CEO building a team, where do I put this person? What is the core business value?
Their value proposition is incredibly high in specific environments. They are essential in feedback-rich, flowing rhythm environments.
Flowing rhythm, so not a quiet archive room.
Definitely not. They need interaction. Their result is that they do not just shine. They convert heat into truly sustainable action power.
It is not just morale. It is momentum.
Exactly.
So where do they thrive? The report lists some recommended professional fields.
It highlights 4 key areas. First, and perhaps most obviously speaking in public expression,
Makes sense.
transmitting vision and igniting crowds is their natural habitat.
Check. What is next?
Second is marketing and brand communication, but specifically the storytelling side, building resonance.
Because marketing is effectively storytelling at scale.
And that is their superpower, making the brand feel alive.
Third,
Third is event hosting and scene coordination, controlling the rhythm of an event. A good host is not just reading a script.
they are managing the energy of the audience to ensure the message lands.
This goes back to reading the room, knowing when the audience is bored and pivoting instantly.
In the force field,
High mobilization organizations, startups, political campaigns, crisis management,
environments that need a jolt.
any role where you need a pioneer on the front line to rally the troops.
It sounds like they're best used when you need to break inertia.
Yes. If the wheel is already spinning smoothly, they might get bored. But if the wheel is stuck in the mud,
That is when you call the FAFN.
that is when you call them.
We have covered a lot of ground here today, from the internal circuitry of ignition activation to the risks of high-frequency depletion.
It is a dynamic profile.
If we had to boil this down to a single takeaway for the listener, what is it?
I think it comes back to that final quote from the source material. It sums up the paradox perfectly.
Read it for us.
When ideas need clear articulation and hearts need igniting the mounts, the energy brightener stands frontline, lighting fires, converting heat into truly sustainable action power.
Converting heat into sustainable action power. That is the key, is it not?
It is.
It is not just about making people feel good. It is about using that feeling to move the mountain.
It is energy with a purpose.
This has been a fantastic deep dive into the FAFN personality. Now, for you listening, it is important to note that this report and the insights we have shared today come directly from the Max Energy ME80 personality assessment.
That is right. It is a robust system, and we have only just scratched the surface of one profile today. There's a whole matrix of different energy types to explore.
If you found yourself nodding along thinking, that is me, or that is my boss, and you want to understand more, you can visit the official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
And for our listeners who want to dig deeper into the community, you can search on Facebook for Max Energy Personality Study or Met Energy Personality Psychology.
There are a lot of resources out there to help you navigate these energy dynamics. It is always worth the time to understand the wiring of the people around you.
It really is.
It makes those Tuesday afternoon meetings a lot easier to navigate. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into understanding human potential.
It has been a pleasure.
We will see you next time.